Thank y'all for tuning in to the Perfect Timing Podcast. Welcome to the Perfect Timing Podcast Studios. My name is Perfect. Thank y'all for watching. Today we're talking about one of our stories that we've been following: Fani Willis, Nathan Wade, Donald Trump, future president, and the RICO case. In Atlanta, Georgia. So we have a new update today with the RICO case in Atlanta, Georgia. We're waiting on, I don't know, March. I think Friday we're gonna get some more information. Fani Willis has to reply to a judge in writing on Friday. And then we might, I think on March 24th, we'll get some information on whether or not she's disqualified. But what the information is that we have today for all of us watching the case is that several counts in the RICO case has been thrown out. The judge has thrown out, and the ones that they've thrown out are pretty big. Some of the conspiracy, when they said Trump was on the phone asking for 11,000 votes, and they said he violated his oath, that's thrown out because, again, like we said about Fani Willis and all of these RICO cases going back to YSL, Atlanta Public Schools, extremely vague, throwing money at the wall, costing the taxpayers a ton of money. And that's what's coming up. It's not just the fact that there's a lot going on with Fani Willis. I don't know what I'll pack in this video. I think I'm just going to focus on the fact that these several counts were removed. But also what's going on is she has other investigations now moving forward. The Georgia House has brought her under investigation for funds, whether or not she misappropriated funds. The actual American Senate is Congress is bringing her under an investigation about misuse and appropriations of funds. She has 3 investigations. Fani Willis herself has 3 investigations stemming from the Nathan Wade affair and him being paid, now we learn, over $700,000 during their illicit affair. So today what we're going to talk about is the fact that we don't have a ruling on whether or not Fani Willis is going to be, Fani Wade is being disqualified. But what we do have is judge dismissing several counts in the Georgia RICO, and we're going to react to some political pundits giving the update on what took place over the last couple days. And I want to hear from you guys in the comments what you think about this. And is this a victory for Trump?
Not all, but some of the charges against Donald Trump and his co-defendants. How significant is this?
It's bad for the prosecution, but not fatal. And any prosecutor bringing a case, look, it's frustrating to have charges thrown out that you spent months working on, putting before a grand jury, and so on. There's a couple things. Number one, the judge all but invites the prosecutors to refile these charges. They have, a 6-month period in which they can refile the charges. And the issue here is that the indictments weren't sufficiently specific as to some of the counts, right? And you can correct that. It's not like the judge found that there was no possible set of circumstances under which these charges could be filed. So it's really up to the prosecutors to decide whether to bring these charges again. The one sort of bit of intrigue and interesting aspect of it is now,
I think he's being kind. I think he's being very kind, because this is why people have a problem with DEI hires, is what he's saying is that, and I heard this, I did a story on this almost months ago when the initial case was filed, that several other attorneys who had worked with Fani Willis said about the way she files these RICOs in these briefings when they said it was over 100 charges, 30 people, and now it's getting down to the fact that it wasn't done properly. He's being kind when he says it was vague. What he means to say is it was incorrect and improper, so the judge threw it out. Vague is a kind term. Let's keep going.
with these 6 charges dismissed, Mark Meadows now only has the racketeering charge against him. He'd been charged with 2 offenses, this violation of oath and racketeering. The violation of oath charge is now out. So there's really only 1 count that applies to Mark Meadows in the indictment as it exists today.
Well, that's a significant count, though.
Yeah, it's a big one. That's the big one.
That's what I mean.
Clear. Yeah.
You know, what's your take, Laurie?
Well, this doesn't throw out the Raffensperger count, former President Trump calling Brad Raffensperger asking for, what was it, 11,700 votes, right? I mean, that is still contained in this
in terms of being a violation of one's oath of office to have made that call, no, that's not that's not a charge anymore. Now the judge is also clear that all of the conduct in these charges that were tossed still can apply to other.
No, that's not a charge anymore. And that's the crux of the whole case. And then again, this DEI where the judge has left open for Fani Willis, who was wrong, vague, inappropriate, misappropriating funds to refile. I wouldn't allow Fani Willis, who could not do it right the first time because she probably was over gallivanting with Nathan Wade, to refile these charges. The judge is giving her another doorway opening to refiling charges when she shouldn't have had the first doorway as to her conduct and her inability to file the briefing correctly. This was the briefing of her life and her career. It needed to be perfect. And 6 charges just got thrown out.
Other charges, it's just this specific crime in Georgia of violating one's oath of office.
So what would that come under then?
That's the thing. It's because the oath of office in Georgia is pretty broad. This prosecutors didn't say what aspect of their oath was violated here. Was it, I don't know, pledging to take care and defend and protect the Georgia state constitution or whatever else? All prosecutors have to do if they wish to proceed is just say, we are charging you with the crime of violation of your oath because on this date, this is the way you broke the oath that you swore to, and it would probably stand up in court.
Sure, Michael, how do you see it?
I mean, look, Wolf, I think for most Americans, they're principally concerned with a few other things. I think the idea of Donald Trump and the political court cases that are pending are sort of baked in for the most part. It's intrigue, it's a lot of chaos. But I think when you compare that to other things such as the economy, immigration, I think most viewers politically would see that as a sort of set aside. I think many Republican voters are going to come to the aid and rally behind the former president because they see this through the lens of sort of political prosecution, if you will. For independent voters, I think the president and Republicans have to articulate other important things. Under President Biden, sure, you have a job, but you've seen an erosion of your spending power. Maybe you're a younger person graduated from college. You can't afford to buy your first home. So if they can articulate that message, you sort of remove the focus from the court trials and back to some of those more tangible things that really impact people's day-to-day lives.
You know, a really important point here is you have 2 lawyers on the panel now who just recovering lawyers who spent 2 minutes explaining a somewhat arcane provision in Georgia law in an indictment. What Trump and his supporters are going to hear is, we won today in court, they're throwing it all away, this is all junk. And it's easy to reduce this, to Shermichael's point, to a political issue. It's, yes, there's an important charge tossed from the indictment. It's not a huge one, but it's a victory for Trump, and they can spin it as a victory.
'Twas ever thus. He spins everything.
Is it though? Is it spin? Is it spin or is it reality? Let me know in the comments. Is this a victory for Trump? Is it spin or is it reality?
It's a victory, right?
Go ahead, Paula.
It's also so chaotic down there,
Yes.
right? I mean, if we step aside from just the charges themselves, it's the political atmosphere surrounding this case, completely unlike the other 3 criminal prosecutions he's facing. These efforts to disqualify Fani Willis, even if they are not successful with removing her from the case, they have certainly tainted, right, the view of this prosecution. This is something that even the average American voter who's not paying attention to all of his legal issues, they would be like, wait a second, you had a romantic relationship with the person who's overseeing this. They received hundreds of thousands of dollars. And even as lawyers, well, we can explain why some of that may not have met the standard that has been set for disqualification. There's an ick factor, and it's not just Trump, right?
Wow, there's an ick factor. Go in.
Who is on trial in these cases. It is the integrity, the trust of the justice system. And that's the biggest problem down in Georgia. It's just such a chaotic mess.
And one more thing to add on top of that, the judge, as he's writing this opinion, is up for re-election.
Yes.
And we have no reason to suggest he's not acting in an above board, proper manner, calling balls and strikes as he sees them, but he's still in a political campaign himself.
Just gave a public interview.
And that's the great tragedy in many jurisdictions in this country, that you make judges run.
I thought that was pretty extraordinary for this judge in a high-profile sitting trial like this is doing public interviews, in effect campaigning for his re-election.
It's mind-boggling.
We've also seen 2 political challengers potentially to Fani Willis that have come out and said that they're going to challenge her because they now don't believe that she has the best interest or the ability to really lead. And so you are seeing, to Paula's point and also to your point, the politicization of this, of people saying, wait a minute here, if I was on my job, would I still have a job if I displayed this type of behavior?
If I was on my job, would I still have a job? I think no.
I think the answer is no.
Paula, there's going to be an interesting development tomorrow. Trump is
Jinx, you owe me a soda.
expected to be in court. Tell us about that.
So this is for the Mar-a-Lago classified documents case, the allegations that he mishandled those documents and tried to obstruct efforts to get them back. And the judge tomorrow, she's going to hear arguments about motions to dismiss these charges. Now, we don't expect that the case is going to be completely dismissed, but all of these cases, the big question is timing, right? A hearing here, a filing there, a few days, a few weeks. The goal of the Trump team is and has always been to get the two federal cases, of which this is one, pushed past the election. Why do they want to get it pushed past the election? Well, if Trump is reelected, he can make both of those cases go away. So what we're watching for tomorrow is we don't really expect the charges will be dismissed. We're looking for any clues as to when this case is going to go to trial. Because I was there a week or two, I lose track, down in Fort Pierce when the judge was hearing arguments about how far back to delay this case. So what we're really
So it's not over for Trump. I got another video we're gonna splice in.
Georgia judge dropping 6 charges of the Fani Willis RICO case against Donald Trump. So let's get right into it here on Live Now from Fox, where the Georgia judge overseeing the election interference case against Donald Trump and 14 defendants dismissed 6 of the charges in the wide-ranging indictment today, saying there were not detailed enough. One of the 41 charges Trump and some of the co-defendants in the case were charged with was soliciting officials in Georgia to violate their oath of office. Those charges were dismissed. The other charges in the case against Trump and other defendants remain. The 6 defendants who had the charge at issue in the case were Trump, Rudy Giuliani, Mark Meadows, John Eastman, Ray Smith, and Robert Cheeley. In different ways, all 6 men attempted to get Georgia officials to violate their oath of office as part of Donald Trump's efforts to overturn the 2020 election, prosecutors said in their August indictment. Those efforts range from pressuring Georgia lawmakers to appoint fake electors to Trump's infamous phone call with Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, urging him to find enough votes to overturn the election. But the judge said today that Fani Willis, the Fulton County District Attorney, had not given enough detail in charging documents as to what specific language in the oaths of office defendants were pressuring officials to violate.
Fani Willis herself had not given enough detail.
The August indictment says the defendants sought to get Georgia officials to violate their oaths to the Georgia Constitution and to the United States Constitution. That language was too vague, the judge said today. The United States Constitution contains hundreds of clauses, any one of which can be subject of a lifetime study, he wrote. The Georgia Constitution is not a mere shadow of its federal counterpart, and although some provisions feature similar language, the Georgia Constitution has seen interpreted to contain dramatically different meanings. As written, these 6 accounts contain all the essential elements of the crimes, but fail to allege sufficient detail regarding the nature of their commission. The underlying felony solicited, the judge wrote in his opinion. They do not give the defendants enough information to prepare their defenses intelligently, as the defendants could have violated the constitutions and thus the statutes in dozens, if not hundreds.
Good job on the part of the judge. Now think about that. He threw the charge out because it doesn't give them the opportunity to defend themselves in an adequate way, because you can't just say he violated his oath when there's over hundreds of things in the statute that he could have done. So how does he put on an adequate defense unless you verbatim say in the charges how and when and why? Because it's not just how he violated his. Okay, so you said I violated my oath in this way. When? Was it on this phone call? What part of this phone call, Fan? This is why she did not give that level of detail, because you have to dial down in court. This is not phoning it in, Fani Willis. If I violated my oath, what particular section. And then now once we pinpoint that, Miss Willis, where on this phone call that you have highlighted to the American people did I violate the oath in that way that you have highlighted in your charges? You now have to present to the jury and the judge and say, when he said this, it violated this. I can charge him. Show that. It's more than they're trying to say. It's a higher.
So, Diane, this is a really interesting ruling from the judge. So, obviously, we are still waiting for his ruling about the efforts to disqualify Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis. Now, that is not what this ruling's about. This is about some of the motions that Trump and some of the co-defendants made to remove some of the charges. So, in this ruling that our team is poring over right now, Diane, we've learned that Judge McAfee has dismissed 6 counts of this indictment, most of which has to do with efforts by Donald Trump, Rudy Giuliani, and a few of the other of the 19 defendants, not all, just some, to solicit executives of the Georgia government. So in one example here, count 5, which has been dismissed from this indictment, our team writes that this was an effort for Donald Trump to solicit the Speaker of the House of Georgia to violate his oath of office, to declare a special session, and to appoint alternate electors. Remember, Diane, of course, as we were covering this story as it developed in real time right after the 2020 election, there were efforts by Donald Trump and Rudy Giuliani to present alternate slates of electors. Remember, these are the people that certify the votes for each state. Of course, in the state of Georgia, it was certified that Joe Biden won. But what Donald Trump and Rudy Giuliani and others, including former Chief of Staff Mark Meadows, were trying to do was to present an alternate slate, an alternate team, if you will, that would certify the vote for Donald Trump. And the efforts by Trump, Giuliani, and Meadows were lobbying state officials. Remember the phone calls that were made to Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, the governor, others, trying to push them, saying, remember, fellas, I only need 11,000 votes. That was a part of this very broad RICO indictment brought by the Fulton County District Attorney's Office. So now that the whole thing goes away, but those are very significant charges that, according to the judge, they're no longer a part of this case as of now, Diane.
So, John, what does this mean for the case against the former president?
So it means we're still going, if you will, right? We haven't learned of any, case that's been dismissed.
Fani Willis, this is what she had to say about today's Senate committee hearing.
Just a political quest. I think that people are angry because I'm going to do the right thing and I'm going to stand up for justice, no matter who is the person that may have done wrong in Fulton County. And so they can continue on with their games, and I'm going to continue to do the work of the people.
Now, earlier today, Fani Willis qualified to run for re-election. We will have much more on what she had to say coming up today at 5. And if
What's your
And tonight we are hearing from 5. And if
I just wanted to go back to the issue about the conflict, because I think that's kind of what brought us all here to some extent. On one issue, in your brief, the most recent one that you filed.
The second one?
Right.
Okay.
On page 21 of that, you went ahead and acknowledged that the aspect about him not signing, I believe, or being duly authorized to be a prosecutor, that's already been handled in one court, but you're still bringing that issue back up. But it has been decided in the negative. In one court, of course, you are still bringing that issue back up.
Yeah, so you're talking about the oath,
right?
The oath issue. Yeah, so Manny Aurora was working on this issue early on, and he filed a motion about the oath. At the time, it hadn't been filed, and in and of itself, that's not, that's not filing an oath. That's not going to get rid of a case. That's not going to disqualify in and of itself. Clearly, the judge told us that.
A great show. Thank you guys for tuning in. I started off with, chapped lips, but we here. Thank you guys for tuning in. My name is Perfect. This is the Perfect Timing Podcast Studios. You've been watching the Perfect Timing Podcast. Thank you so much for watching, and y'all have a blessed day. We out. Oh, Make sure you click the video link to this video right here, right now. Watch and stay up to date on all of the issues with Fani Willis and Donald Trump, and we'll be back for more.